You complete me. They're my other half. We've all heard these phrases.
Oh, absolutely. They're everywhere.
These really deeply ingrained ideas about finding the one, that single perfect soulmate just for us. It's such a powerful narrative.
It truly is. And that's exactly what we're going to get into in this deep dive.
Okay.
So what we want to do today, our kind of mission, is to unpack this concept the article labels one-itis.
One-itis,
Yeah.
right.
We want to understand where this whole belief in a singular soulmate might come from and really explore some potential downsides the article brings up.
Pitfalls, yeah. Okay, so let's start there. How does the article actually define this onitis? What is it?
Well, the author uses a pretty strong term for it. They call it a form of paralysis.
Paralysis, wow.
Yeah. The idea is, like, when someone gets totally fixated on one specific person as being the one, well, their own personal growth, their sense of self, it just kind of stalls.
Stalls. So they stop focusing on themselves.
Pretty much. It's like so much of their identity gets tangled up with this one other person. Their whole world sort of shrinks.
Wrapped up in that one individual. Okay.
Exactly. And this concept of paralysis, it's really central to the article's main point, which is pretty blunt, actually.
What's up?
It states, there is no one period.
Okay. Bold. So it's directly challenging that whole soulmate myth then.
Absolutely. That's the core of it, challenging the soulmate myth.
That picture we get from like every romantic comedy ever.
Right. The meet cute, the instant connection.
And boom, happily ever after.
Yeah.
Destiny.
Exactly. But the article argues this isn't just, wishful thinking. It can actually be harmful, paralyzing, like we said.
How so paralyzing?
Well, this fixation, this search for the perfect one, it can stop people from actually, living their own lives fully, from engaging with what's right in front of them.
Okay. Now here's something interesting the article touched on. Who is it that struggles most with letting go of this idea? It wasn't quite who I expected.
No, it's sort of counterintuitive, isn't it?
Yeah.
The article suggests that sometimes it's people who really value logic and understanding in other parts of their lives. Science, psychology, biology.
Types.
Exactly. Those might be the ones who resist the idea that love isn't necessarily this pre-scripted one person per person deal.
Why do you think the author suggests that? What's the reasoning there?
Well, they draw this really potent analogy. It's like telling someone deeply religious that God is dead.
Whoa, okay. That's strong.
It is. It basically challenges a foundational belief, something they might have built their whole worldview around, at least when it comes to romance.
So the idea that there isn't just one person, or maybe even that there could be several good fits. That feels
like pulling the rug out. It can feel destabilizing, maybe even a bit nihilistic,
Yeah.
losing that comforting sense of destiny.
Right, losing the preordained narrative. Okay, so let's dig into that distinction the article makes. It differentiates between healthy monogamy, choosing one partner, and this unhealthy onitis. Can you unpack that difference a bit more?
Yeah, definitely. And this is crucial. The author isn't attacking commitment or loving long-term relationships at all.
Okay, good.
The key difference is in the motivation. Healthy monogamy, the article implies, comes from mutual respect, real affection, building a life together.
Right, a choice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Onitis, though, is framed more as a psychological dependency. It's seen as being fueled by that constant cultural reinforcement of the soulmate myth we talked about.
So less about genuine connection, more about need, fear.
Precisely. Rooted in neediness, maybe a fear of being alone rather than a balanced partnership, it's presented as clinging, not connecting.
And the article goes into where this onitis belief might actually come from, beyond just rom-coms, right? What about the sociological roots?
Yeah, it argues it's really woven into society.
Yeah.
Through, media, music, books, movies. Basically a constant stream of messages hammering home this idea of the one.
The cultural narrative.
For sure. And here's where it gets particularly sharp. The article calls out how certain industries actually profit from this.
Profit from it? Like who?
Specifically mentions dating services. eHarmony is named as an example.
Ah, okay. Makes sense.
The argument is they capitalize on the insecurities that this belief fosters. They're essentially selling the promise of finding that unique, destined partner as the cure for loneliness.
Wow. That's quite a take. It's a powerful marketing tool, tapping into that deep human desire for connection.
It really is.
Yeah.
But the author also contrasts this onitis thing with, fundamental human drives.
How so? What drive?
Well, it acknowledges that humans often do have natural tendencies towards, say, protecting loved ones, forming pair bonds, maybe monogamy.
Okay, the basics.
Right. But onitis isn't seen as just a natural expression of those. It's presented more like a distortion, a warped version that can actually undermine healthy relationships.
How does it undermine them?
By twisting those natural drives into something potentially obsessive, or maybe even controlling, instead of nurturing.
Okay, so how does this actually play out in people's lives? Does onitis look different if you're single versus in a relationship?
Yeah, the article suggests it manifests differently. For single people, it might look like this relentless, almost desperate search.
Chasing the unicorn?
Kinda.
Yeah.
Placing maybe unrealistic expectations on everyone they meet, looking for that instant zap, dismissing potentially good partners if they don't fit the perfect mold immediately.
Right, impatient searching. And for people already coupled up.
It can be incredibly binding, is the argument.
Yeah.
Even in relationships that are clearly unhealthy or damaging.
Why? Because they think this person is the one.
Exactly. That fear of losing the one, the belief that this is their only chance, even if the relationship is causing pain, it can trap them.
That makes sense. Like, this is my shot. I can't blow it, even if it's making me miserable.
Uh-huh. And the article also hits on how this whole belief system can warp our actual understanding of what a relationship even is.
How does it do that?
Well, the constant focus on finding this idealized one often involves a huge amount of idealizing the relationship itself. We build up this fantasy of effortless perfection, right?
The happily ever after trope again.
Totally. Which the article argues is kind of contradicted by the very act of desperately chasing this one specific person. You might overlook someone who's actually a really good compatible partner.
Because you're so focused on the fantasy one.
Yeah. You get so fixated on finding them that you maybe fail to develop a realistic sense of the actual work and compromise and just ongoing effort that real lasting relationships take.
And this idealization, this dependency, it can mess with the power dynamics too, can't it?
Oh, absolutely. That's a really crucial point the article makes. When one partner sees the other as their one and only, their irreplaceable soulmate, it inherently shifts the power. The person being put on that pedestal, the one being one-itized, they gain a certain leverage just by being seen as indispensable.
Right. The article gives an example, I think. A man who thinks his partner is the only one he could ever be compatible with.
Exactly. That belief automatically puts her in a more powerful position in that dynamic, doesn't it? Even if she's not consciously trying to leverage it.
Yeah, it changes the balance.
And the author flips this too. Talks about a woman maybe staying in a bad relationship because she's convinced he's her one, her only source of security, perhaps.
So the fear of being alone or the fear of losing the one keeps her there.
Right, that fear of the one that got away. Even if the current situation is bad, it becomes this powerful reason to stay stuck. Hypergamy might play a role too, but the onitis is presented as a key factor in that fear.
So bringing it all together then, how does the article connect this onitis idea to, like, personal power, our sense of control over our own lives?
It uses a really interesting definition of power, not about money or status, but power as the degree to which we have control over our own lives.
Okay, internal power, agency.
Exactly. And the argument follows that if you fully subscribe to this soulmate myth, this idea of the one, well, you're inherently giving up some of that control, some of that agency in a huge part of your life.
Your romantic life.
Yeah. You're kind of handing over the reins to fate or destiny or this external concept of a pre-picked partner. It implies a degree of powerlessness.
And the article wraps it up with a pretty unforgettable final statement, doesn't it?
It really does. It circles back and hammers home that central thesis, crystal clear. It says, there is no one. There are some good ones and there are some bad ones, but there is no one.
Wow. No ambiguity there. Just flat out challenges that whole cultural narrative we started with.
Yep. Leaves no room for doubt about its position.
Okay. So to sort of wrap up our deep dive on this article, the main takeaway really seems to be highlighting the potentially limiting, maybe even unhealthy aspects of clinging too tightly to that idea of one perfect soulmate.
That's the core message, yeah. How it can potentially block personal growth, foster unhealthy dependencies, and even keep people stuck in relationships that aren't good for them.
It really pushes you, the listener, to take a critical look at this pervasive soulmate myth, doesn't it?
It does. And to consider how your own views on relationships stack up against the points raised in this material.
Which brings us to a final thought for you to chew on. If this whole concept of the one is, as the article strongly suggests, more of a societal story we tell ourselves, how might consciously shifting away from that belief change your approach to relationships,
So,
to your own well-being.
what new possibilities might open up for connection, maybe even happiness?
Yeah.
If you embrace the idea that there could be, well, lots of potential special someones, instead of pouring all your energy into finding that single, maybe mythical one.